we have the Populist Party kind of starts to fizzle out. It's around for maybe 10 years. But this Democratic candidate, the Democratic Party starts to really pick up the issues that the populists care about. So both political parties, anytime there's a third party, both political parties have the opportunity to take up the cause of that third party, to figure out what that third party wants and see if they can address it so they can capture those particular votes. But in this case, the Republican Party is not really concerned with the farmers. The Democratic Party is going to take up these issues. And so we get this candidate in the election of 1896 named William Jennings Bryan. He is the Democratic nominee for president, and he gives this really famous speech called the Cross of Gold speech. But before I tell you the details of the speech, I want to talk about the imagery here, because I think this is imagery that's probably familiar to all of us. What does or most of us, half of us, who knows? What does, in the Christian religion or Catholic religion, what does the cross represent? Okay, Jesus or God, but let's be more specific than that. Okay, the Holy Trinity.
His dying, to pay the debt of our sins.
Okay, so a sacrifice, right? Like a sacrifice. So what William Jennings Bryan does here, because we're in kind of this midst of a Protestant movement in the country, is that he takes Christianity, which is important to a lot of people, and he uses that to kind of make a comparison. And he says that by staying on the gold standard, that farmers and bankers and the average person is like taking up the cross. You are being crucified so that we can stay on the gold standard. He really says that this gold standard's not benefiting the people. In fact, you're all having to sacrifice your own personal prosperity so that we can stay on this gold standard. The populists are going to support him in this particular election, but the Democratic Party does not win in 1896. The Republican Party does, with a guy named William McKinley. And William McKinley wins mostly because by the time that the election rolls around, we've discovered more gold in Yukon, and that gold means that we're no longer limited on how much money we can print. We can now print a whole bunch more. Yes?
Why did he praise farmers but denounce bankers? I feel like he's getting votes, but then he would also be
Because the bankers are the capitalists. They are the people who are using their money for corrupt reasons. Maintaining a gold standard benefits them at the expense of the average person to maintain this system, this monetary system. So William McKinley is going to win. He is very much pro-big business. He's very pro-wealthy. And because the Panic of 1893 is pretty much over, there's more gold discovered in Yukon. There's not as much of a threat anymore, if you will. They can print more money. They can put more money in circulation. He wins this particular election. Now, one of the things that I point out to students every year, because you'll see this pattern that'll happen for the rest of this school year until we get to the modern time. I love to look at electoral maps because electoral maps tell us how different groups of people think. So when we look at these results, right, why would this portion of the country be voting for the Democratic candidate?
Because that's where all the farmers are.
Okay, that's where the farmers are, right? And the same down here, right? This is all former plantation, former still an agricultural stronghold in the country. What we're going to see over time is that this block down here is going to continue to vote together. Even into the modern time, you can almost guarantee in every election that Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and Florida, and usually South Carolina will vote together. Okay, so whether they're going to vote Democrat until we get to the 80s. They're going to vote together for a reason, because that is the party that at the time is representing their particular interests. We're gonna see this change, and I'll explain why. When we think about political parties, it's important to remember that if you are a Republican in 2026, you are not the same as a Republican in 1865 or the party of Abraham Lincoln. They're just not the same thing. If you are a Democrat in 2026, you are not the same as a Democrat in 1896 or 1865. These platforms, these belief systems change over time, okay? They're gonna maintain some similarities, but their major beliefs are gonna change over a period of time. And we're gonna talk about a big change that happens in the 60s when we get there. All right, 1900, so just 4 years later, William Jennings Bryan is gonna run against McKinley again, and he's gonna lose again, and that is gonna be the end of the Populist Party. Now, William Jennings Bryan's not gonna necessarily just fade out of existence. He is gonna become important again when we get to the 1920s because he is a lawyer, and he is going to be involved in a very important case. Yes?
Can you run every, if you just keep running as long as you want to?
Yeah, and in fact, one of the things that's been a modern discussion is even though the Constitution says you can't be elected more than twice, there's nothing that says you can't run. So technically, you just run anyway. You may not get your party's nomination, but
But what if you win?
I don't know. It's never happened, but it is a modern discussion because we're currently the president has talked about wanting to run for a third term. Yes,
Who decides, like, who's the,
you do.
no, but I get that, but like, who decided that, like, Donald Trump was, like, the Republican?
You do. So maybe you didn't vote, right? But here's what happens.
But like, what if,
I'm gonna explain it. You take a big pool of people, right? Let's say that this half of the classroom right here decides they want to run for president and they want to run under the Republican ticket. And that side of the classroom wants to run for president under the Democratic ticket. You can all run. If you got the money, if you got the backing to put out the ads and travel and do the things, you can. Now in April of an election year, we have primaries. And what primaries are is where we all go down and we take this big pool of people and we vote for which one we want to be the candidate. So when it comes to the election, Donald Trump, Kamala Harris is a little different because the way that Biden dropped out of the election, but the primaries, that voting to narrow down this group, chose him to be the front runner for the Republican Party. And then he officially, like in ceremony, gets the nomination of the Republican Party and becomes the person on the ticket in November. Kamala Harris was different because Joe Biden received the primary votes, but then dropped out of the race, and she got the nomination based on like a special panel of people that decided that for her. But generally speaking, we decide that. Primaries, and we talk about elections, primaries, local elections, state elections are probably far more important than going in November and voting for the president. Because by the time you get to November, you don't have a choice anymore. It's this one or this one, right? So that's how they get it. All right. Bryan is going to lose again. McKinley becomes the president. Those new gold discoveries in the Yukon help to bring the economy up. And we start to see some transformation in these states here. These states that voted for William Jennings Bryan are going to flip to McKinley because things are not so bad right now. And they favored him over Bryan. The legacy of populism. I think this is the last slide. Yes. The legacy of populism is that third parties provide an outlet for people who don't feel like they fit into the two major political parties. Maybe you feel like you agree with some of the things that the Republican Party stands for, or some of the things that the Democratic Party stands for, but you can't get on board with everything. Third parties provide you a place where you can have your voice heard. Those two major political parties have to listen to you because at the end of the day, they care about your vote. In order to get your vote, they have to address the issues that matter to you. And so what we see happening with the Populist Party is the adoption of their ideas that end up being constitutional amendments. We're going to see this again in the 1990s with a guy named Ross Perot. And those two big political parties have to change their strategy to be able to capture the votes of these third parties. So they have a huge impact on the outcome of an election when enough people support the third party. All right, that's it for today. We'll pick up tomorrow with the progressive presidents.